Hey, what's up, you guys? I hope you're having a good day. We have another mock draft to go over today. It's New Orleans. Oh, it's the Saints. We got to kick those crawdads up today because we're ready to fire this thing up, New Orleans style. We got to get the Mardi Gras action up in this joint. But we are starting off with the roster, and this roster is actually pretty decent. And there's some things that New Orleans have done. They've done a good job, and I got to give credit to Mickey Lomas, who I've given a lot of harsh tactics to over the seasons and whatnot. But this is gonna get interesting real quick if Tyler Shough takes that next step. And speaking of quarterbacks, it's not a need. You got Shough. They brought in just Zach Wilson too recently. Maybe a third stringer, I'm guessing, with Spencer Rattler. Maybe, who knows? Maybe a team might call up for Spencer Rattler and make a trade. That's a possibility too. But quarterback's not a need. Wide receiver is a need. I think we need to go after a wide receiver pretty early. It could even be a first round need for them, depending on how things work up on the board. I think it's a round one through round three need though, so that will be something we look at adding in the draft. Running back wise, they're good to go. Got in Travis Etienne. That is going to be cool. I like that one a lot. I think that Kellen Moore is going to use Etienne in a lot of fun ways as a pass catcher and as a receiving or as a running back, of course. You got Devin Neal, Alvin Kamara. Yeah, looking good at the running back position. Tight end, I would like to add a blocker. So is it an early need? No, but I think somewhere around round 4, round 5, there's a lot of value in the tight end class to be able to get a good blocker in this class. And then on the offensive line, I want to add somebody here too. I think that they've got to add a center to be able to develop on Eric McCoy. He's just injured a lot. He's a great center. He's just unfortunately keeps getting injured. So we need to have some sort of backup plan. Luke Fortner is now gone. And then guard wise, I would still love to upgrade the guard at right guard position in Cesar Ruiz, who struggled, but they did bring back Dylan Radins. At least he can be a good backup for them and compete. I don't know. It's a tough one. It is a really tough decision on what they want to do. It seems like they're just going to be comfortable rolling it back with Cesar Ruiz. And then tackle wise, you're good to go here. Maybe you get a long-term swing tackle. Asim Richards, though, for right now, figures to be your main swing tackle. You get your two starters locked in. Defensively, corner's actually a low-key need, and I could see them addressing cornerback pretty early in the draft. Quincy Riley, I think, can play either inside or outside. He showed that he can play on the outside this past season and play pretty high level, too. I do think they need to add here. There's a pretty gaping hole. Isaac Yiadom, to me, is more of a backup corner than somebody that I want starting from a week-to-week perspective. So that is an area that we will be looking at early in the draft. This isn't a round 1 through round 2 type of need. I think it's the biggest need on the roster right now. Safety looks good. You got Sanker, Reed, Howden, and Blockman as your main rotation there, and Burgess too. So they're pretty rocking there at safety, no worries. And those guys are under contract too for at least 2 seasons. Well, except for Blockman. A linebacker, I'm not super worried about linebacker. The main reason for that is Ellis comes in here, who's back. That's great to see. And then Pete Warner's still under contract for another couple seasons. You got Danny Stutzman, who's a young guy who I thought played pretty good in limited flashes last year. At least when I saw him out there, I saw him making plays. You got Isaiah Stallbird, who was a really good blitzer for them. They're in a pretty good spot. Jalen Ford is the 5th guy. They could use some more depth, possibly. It's not a huge need, though. It's more of a day 3 type of selection. Defense tackle's a need. It's not an early need, but it is something that they need to go after because Nathan Shepard and also Devon Gachow are going into contract seasons, and they're also getting a little bit older now. They're, 32 and 31? Not, ancient or anything like that. I don't, but yeah, I mean, ageism out here, but we need to start looking at the future there and maybe thinking about that situation because maybe only one of those guys are brought back or whatever. So finding a defense tackle makes sense. Edge, we need some depth here, so we'll draft maybe 1 or 2 guys. This is an earlier need. This is like even round 1, if it's best player available. I wouldn't hate them drafting an edge rusher, especially for Brendan Staley, who's going to be more of a guy that's looking for somebody that can also drop back into coverage a little more. Maybe Grenderson could even be traded if they drafted a first rounder type of edge rusher. That's obviously an option, but Grenderson's still a good football player. I do think they'll draft an edge rusher somewhat early. 2nd, 3rd round makes a lot of sense for them. And then we do need a kicker. We absolutely need to draft a kicker, so we'll try to look at doing that. Or they need to pick up somebody, get some competition, go check out the UFL, whatever you got to do. They got to get some special team help out here. So let's pop into the action here and get into the good stuff, where I'm going to go after Mansour Delane with their first pick. I think with where the value is at and what they could be looking at on the board, Mansour Delane would be a pretty fun pick and somebody that comes in, Louisiana, of course. However, it's not just for the ties and the little, the storylines or anything like that. Maybe a little bit, but I also think that he'd be a great add to their secondary that also could play inside out. So you have Quincy Riley, who I think can play inside out. I think Mansour could play inside out. You kind of figure out who plays the best on the outside, who plays the best in the slot, and you go from there. But Delane, Kool-Aid McKistry, who turned in one of the better corners towards the end of the season last year or this past season, and Quincy Riley. So it's a really young core. Maybe you have yourself a Legion of Boom building up out here. And then we're going to go Chris Bell from Louisville. This was storylines. I'll just be honest, the storylines. I mean, you go and get Tyler Shook, a familiar weapon. I think Jeremy Bernard would also be a great pick here. There's a couple of guys, depending on how the board shapes up. Maybe if a Casey Concepcion falls to this point, there's a lot of guys to watch out for in this pick at 42. Get a wide receiver. Go get a weapon to help out Tyler Shook in this offense. Chris Olave, Chris Bell, the two Chris's out in this team, and then you got Vele and Tipton competing for that third and fourth positions, a better receiving core. And yes, the injuries, something you have to look at, but the talent with Chris Bell is really, really good. If he can clean up the route running a little bit more, if nothing else, just get the ball in his hands early on, because he's just that dynamic and he's so explosive. He really is one of the more explosive athletes in this class, and with his size profile too. You know, there's a little bit of shades of the A.J. Brown, right? Just got to get those ball skills together and everything like that. We're going Romello Height in the third round. I liked Romello Height in this scheme and the way that Brandon Staley would be able to utilize him. He is somebody that is so difficult to be able to go one-on-one against, just because he's one of those guys that has that certain level of blend of explosive, run down you, even though he's not the biggest guy. He just isn't afraid of anybody. He kind of has that certain jack to him where it's like, yeah, I know I'm smaller than you. I may not have the length profile, but I'm just going to barrel down you and I'm going to go 100% every single snap. There just doesn't seem like he takes reps off. So combine that with his athleticism ability and his crazy burst off the line of scrimmage and his creativity with his hands to get off of offensive lineman creative, even though he's not the biggest guy. I think he can be a really good sub-package rusher for them that can also drop back into coverage too. And then we go with Trey Zune at the third from Texas A&M, who's going to be a nice developmental center for them. He played left tackle at Texas A&M, and he was very good there. He just doesn't have the size. His arm length, he's got shorter arms. He's got like 32-inch arms. Put him inside to the center position. I think he's one of the more technologically advanced guys in this draft class, actually. He's very good with his hands and knows how to use them. And he's just somebody that strikes me, move him to the center, because he's a solid enough athlete. He's not a good enough athlete for left tackle, in my opinion. But move him inside. I think he can brawl some dudes up there and open some, decent lane. He's not going to, monster dudes in the run game, because I do think he plays a little high, so his leverage isn't always perfect in the run game. Overall, though, as a pass protector, I really was impressed with him watching his film. Then you got Chris McClellan from Missouri, and McClellan is a nice player that you add into the defensive line that almost feel like can be like a Sebastian Joseph Day type of player that can play a multitude of roles on your defensive line. And when I talk about Nathan Shepard trying to get somebody to develop behind him for a season, I think it makes sense Chris McClellan can do that sort of thing in Missouri. He also improved his production quite a bit. He ended up this past season with like 6 sacks, and it showed. Like he got better with his hands. He's still not great in that department. He's going to have to get better. He's not the most explosive guy or anything like that, but he's strong. He's really strong. He's got good arm length too, so he can hold the point of attack and play on a multitude of roles in that 3-4 defense. And then we got Marlon Klein from Michigan, going to be a good developmental blocking guy. He's got size. He just needs to build out his frame a little bit more to be a good blocker. But I think he makes a lot of sense in that regard to be a really good developmental blocker. Be tight end 3 for now. And then long term, I think he could be a good tight end 2 for this next pick. I'm going to go take George Gums Jr. from Florida. I think he's a guy that can be just a good, solid run defender type of dude. I mean, he's got really good length. That's one thing I noticed about him. He's just really, really strong with his hands and stuff. He's not really the most technically front as a pass rusher. I don't think he has the twitch either to be like a crazy bend guy or anything like that. But I think he can be really, really strong as a run defender, early down guy, rotational player. So we got kind of like a pass rusher in Romello Height, and then we get more of like a run defender in George Gums Jr. So just trying to find a complementary set of skill sets and somebody that I think would fit a scheme for Brandon Staley and whatnot. And then final pick, Trey Smack. Hit you with the smack up in here. The whack of attack of an Eminem. I don't know. Anyway, sorry. I'm G-sling for a reason. You know what I'm saying? But we're pumping it out here. Pumping it up in rhymes. Anyway, you can talk some smack from me for sure. But we'll go and get a kicker. We need to. And Smack's a good one. So try to bolster that kicking room, because they got to do that this offseason. They got to at least have some competition. As I mentioned earlier, whether it's the UFL, the draft, for UDFA, whatever the heck they may do, they got to add some competition there. So that's New Orleans. Let me know what you think, agree or disagree on this. If you have a mock draft, definitely let me know, show me. I want to see it, or any ideas on who you want for the New Orleans Saints, because I think they could go in a couple of different ways early in this draft for sure. But that's going to do it. I hope you guys have a good day, and we'll be back with KC next.